Lawrence Thoreau was born in 1952 in Chicago, Illinois, the youngest son in a family of 12 children, all of whom lived together in a tiny 3-room apartment. That alone suggests an upbringing that would probably be worthy of a compelling memoir or biopic, but Lawrence would ultimately go on to live an even more interesting life, enjoying one of the most fascinating Hollywood success stories possible. But first, he would need a name change. Bothered by memories of constantly hearing his elder relatives being called boy throughout his youth, when he turned 18, Lawrence decided to adopt a name that would force white people to address him as Mr. And so, Lawrence Thoreau gave way to Mr. T. Throughout high school, Mr. T played football, practiced martial arts, and wrestled, becoming the citywide wrestling champion 2 years in a row. After being expelled from college after 1 year, despite a football scholarship, he worked as a gym instructor for a government program in Chicago, where he discovered a gift for connecting with and helping young children. A stint in the military police while enlisted in the Army followed, but it was at his later job as a bouncer at the Chicago club Dingbats Discotheque, where Mr. T would begin to develop his soon-to-be famous persona. He began wearing the gold jewelry that patrons accidentally left behind or lost while fighting. But Mr. T didn't wear the pieces one at a time, choosing instead to wear all the jewelry at once, which, together with his signature mohawk, made for a striking image. His talent as a bouncer came to be so well known, he was able to parlay it into a career as a bodyguard for influential people like politicians, judges, models, and athletes. As a celebrity bodyguard, Mr. T's clients included Steve McQueen, Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, Muhammad Ali, and Joe Frazier. But it was his winning appearance in an NBC competition program called America's Toughest Bouncer that would really change his life. One of the viewers watching the program was none other than Sylvester Stallone, who was so impressed by Mr. T's look and personality, he cast him as Clubber Lang, the main antagonist of 1982's Rocky III. It was meant to be a role with only a few lines, but the role grew during filming due to his undeniable charisma, and even gave birth to the catchphrase that would become synonymous with Mr. T, "I pity the fool." The film's massive success made Mr. T an overnight star, and while he had been the ostensible villain of Rocky III, he now instead capitalized on his actual innate likability to turn his real-life persona into an unavoidable and beloved media figure throughout the early 80s. By 1983, only 1 year after Rocky III, Mr. T was already a regular guest star on numerous TV, variety, and talk shows, had his own Scooby-Doo-esque NBC cartoon series where he helped a group of young gymnasts solve mysteries, and received top billing in the Joel Schumacher comedy DC Cab. The next few years would see Mr. T release a rap album, and a motivational video aimed at helping children control their anger and battle bullying. And he got involved in the world of professional wrestling, where he would be a participant in the main event match of WWE's inaugural WrestleMania. And while Mr. T's fame and pop culture omnipresence would gradually diminish throughout the later 80s and into the 90s, he would forever after remain a popular TV personality, guest star, and commercial pitchman. This nostalgic love of Mr. T is almost certainly largely thanks to another of his projects from 1983, a wildly successful action-adventure series that would run on NBC for 5 seasons, and, like Mr. T himself, would have a title focused on a single, impactful letter. And while Mr. T was only one member of the show's ensemble cast, there is no question he was the breakout star and main attraction, so much so that, when a feature film adaptation went ahead many years later, the lack of involvement or endorsement from Mr. T was seen as an early warning sign. Would the movie overcome that obstacle? Well, we're covering it on this show, so I guess that probably answers the question. The year is 2010, and 20th Century Fox is looking to launch the next big action franchise with their adaptation of the popular 80s TV series, The A-Team.
In 2020, a crack friend unit was sent to quarantine by a worldwide pandemic for a virus they didn't start. These men promptly escaped from a maximum security stockade to the podcast underground. Today, still wanted by Hollywood, they survive as soldiers of fortune. If your movie fails, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the F2F team.
Welcome once again to Failure to Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Trev.
And I'm Chris.
And Chris, it's a new year. Sometimes podcasts I know like to celebrate a new year by coming out firing with like a really big episode to really draw in new listeners. And we said, screw that. Let's do a movie that not many people cared about at the time and no one remembers today.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
the F2F special, honestly.
Yes. But it's also not only a new year, but also, and I know this is what gets you more excited, a time for a new theme for us.
Yes.
Yes, you love your themes. Although this is funny because this theme does kind of roll right off of the episode that ended the year for us, Lost in Space. But we'll get into that. But yeah, we are starting a new theme, and so we decided to ring in 2023 with the ABCs of TV.
Love it.
That's a sweaty one. I'm gonna struggle with that over the next 3 episodes, I think. But this is a great idea from you. Why don't you tell the listeners about the theme, and then we can talk about what we're starting it off with.
Yeah, we're, right after the Lost in Space one, we rolled into some more TV stuff. And with ABC, we thought A-Team, Baywatch, and Charlie's Angels. So, we'll start off the new year with A-Team. Might as well start it off right, wrong, who knows? We'll get to it.
Yeah, 2010's The A-Team, based on the classic 80s television series of the same name. Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about the movie version?
So the movie is directed by Joe Carnahan, most famous for Narc, Smokin' Aces, The Grey, Stretch. It is.
Don't say he's most famous for Stretch.
Well, I'm giving the man a little bit of something, okay?
I've seen Stretch, and I think there's 8 other people who've seen it.
Yes. And one of them is speaking to you right now.
Okay, cool.
But it is also written by Joe Carnahan, Brian Bloom, who is an actor, and actually, weirdly enough, he's been a writer on the Call of Duty video game series since 2013. And also Skip Woods. Skip Woods. I
got a lot to say about Skip Woods. So,
Okay, he has written Swordfish, Hitman, and our favorite, X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Hey, let's just keep it going. He also wrote A Good Day to Die Hard, the 5th and most miserable Die Hard film. And he wrote Hitman Agent 47, the even worse sequel. So,
the less said about that Die Hard, the better. And as Trev said, this is based on the 1980s TV series created by Frank Lupo and Stephen J. Cannell. The movie's budget is $110 million. Domestically, it made $77 million, and worldwide, $177 million. So, not great, not atrocious, not the type of disasters that we typically see, but just really not enough to get a multi-film franchise off the runway, so to speak, especially when the TV series went for 5 seasons, and this one was kind of just dead on arrival for 1. So
I was going to say, it's certainly not what they're expecting for a movie based on a show that had such a big pop culture kind of awareness. Although I will say, you did say 5 seasons, and yes, it was a success, but I was just looking at this, and Chris, only 98 episodes. They couldn't even make it to 100. Show sucks.
That's also weird, because isn't the rule for syndication you get to 100 and then basically everybody makes bank? Was that
that show definitely ended up syndicated later because I was on all the time when I was a kid. But
right.
But yeah, I know that's like a basic rule to sell syndication packages, but I'm sure they probably have exceptions for certain shows.
I guess, right off the bat, what is your relationship to this property? Like we've never spoken about A-Team, and I know that's what we do. That's what you do when you meet somebody. You talk about the A-Team. But
A-Team is always a conversation starter.
Yes, this was one we really have never discussed. So, Trev, what is your relation with the A-Team?
Not much, honestly. It's one of those things that as a child of the 80s, I was obviously aware of it. I don't know that I ever watched a full episode, but I certainly would come across it, flipping through channels when I was a kid. Like I said, reruns would be on quite a bit as I got a little older even still. My main relationship with it is kind of being very aware of like the toys and the marketing around it as a kid, and then obviously just Mr. T. Mr. T was kind of this inescapable personality in the 80s. And I certainly knew that was because of the A-Team, or at least largely because of the A-Team.
Right.
And then I do know when I went to Universal Studios as a kid, they had an A-Team stunt spectacular, one of those stunt shows. And I remember seeing that as a kid. But yeah, I was never like a big fan of the show. I had like a pretty basic awareness of what it was, as I think everyone else did. But I wouldn't even say it's like that's not even my Mr. T thing. I mean, for me, obviously, Mr. T is Clubber Lang, and then also DC Cab, which is a movie I quite like. But
Right.
A-Team was never quite it for me. What about you? Did you have like any awareness of the A-Team?
Nothing. Yeah, like nothing. Mr. T is.
What about the van? Did you know the van?
Barely. Honestly, but barely. This totally preceded my youth, everything. I'm a child of the '90s, so. Weirdly though, because I was watching Lost in Space when I was a kid too. But I guess
What about the theme song? Did the theme song mean anything to you?
The theme song,
theme song.
Yeah, like I recognize it because I would hang out with like my grandparents and stuff at their house a lot, and you'd flip to the rerun station or the one of like old 80s stuff like Three's Company and Golden Girls and like MacGyver and shit like that. So like this would pop up, but I don't think I've ever I'm with you. I never watched an episode, which is great for us to be the experts to talk about the A-Team in its modern day incarnation. But
my other connection to A-Team, which I was just reminded of in my head, and this is kind of, I don't know, I think this is funny and my family thinks it's funny. I don't know if it'll be funny to anyone else, but I mentioned going to Universal Studios and them having the A-Team Stunt Spectacular. They also had like the van there that you could actually get on the van and take pictures.
Right.
But one thing I actually remember was, at Universal Studios, you'd do the tram tour. We'd get in the trams and drive all around the lot, and they would show you all the places they film, and there'd be like rides you go through in the tram. And our driver, one of the jokes, because the driver has like a whole spiel, like they're talking to you over an intercom. And one of our drivers, one of the years we went, his whole joke and his spiel was like 8 times during the ride, he said, "Okay, we're gonna play a little trivia. See if you can guess this classic TV theme." And every time it was the A-Team theme. He just did it like over and over and over again, which is funny. But also by the end of the ride, you were like, "Fuck this theme song,"
It's weird because like this, I guess this show is obviously iconic. Not so long lasting because again,
well, 5 seasons is pretty good.
No, but I mean,
shake a stick at.
I guess what I would say in the public consciousness, because think of it this way: me and you share. I mean, we have shared many times on this podcast about our history with certain properties and here and there. Is this the first one based on a pre-existing thing that me and you both are just so new to? Like, it just feels like we at least have some type of anecdote or at least more than the average bare familiarity with something. But this one, it escaped us almost.
I was going to say that. I mean, it's, maybe I could have saved this for later, but it's not really getting into the review. I do think the A-Team is an interesting one in that everybody knows the name. I think everybody knows the general concept and everyone knows Mr. T was in it. But I think you're right that beyond that, I don't know that it held on that much.
Right.
And I kind of feel like, with not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I honestly have to say that by 2010, I don't think the A-Team was really, popular enough of a franchise or IP for anybody to bother doing this movie. I really think they kind of made a mistake on how much they thought this was like still hanging on in the pop culture at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
At least to the level of how they tried to reintroduce it too. Like that was because it seemed like they were way too confident about the A-Team still being like this mega like popular thing, and I just don't think that was the case.
And like, I mean, 2010 wasn't when they were starting to develop this thing. Like, I guess this was in development since the 90s. Trying to get this film off the ground.
Which that makes more sense because we talked last time in the Lost in Space episode about how the 90s was the era of dust off those old TV shows and make them,
Totally. But it really didn't pick up traction until the mid-2000s when they actually did sign John Singleton to direct this thing. And at the time, Ice Cube was approached for the role of that Mr. T was so iconic for. Should we just say these main characters first? I guess we've got...
Well, yeah, we should also just mention what the concept is, I guess, because we keep saying people know the concept, but I'm sure some of our listeners probably don't, actually.
Sure.
So why don't I do the concept, and then you can talk about like the characters.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then we'll get more into like obviously the story of the overall show as we talk about the movie, but the general concept of the show and the movie is the A-Team is a group of 4 former Special Forces soldiers who have all been they were imprisoned for a crime that they didn't commit. Well, actually, I guess they did commit it, but it was that they were given a mission, an illegal mission, and they did the mission, but then the person who gave them the mission, who could prove that they were told to do that, was murdered, and so they have nobody to back them up. And they're sent to prison, and they end up escaping. And then the concept of the show is that from that point on, they are now obviously outlaws, but they work as soldiers of fortune. You can hire them to come in and like, if there's somebody evil taking over your town, they'll come and save the town. Or they'll just, I don't know. I didn't watch the show, so I don't know what kind of things they get hired for. But that's the idea. That's from the show starts with like a voiceover narration explaining this, that they're not only wanted by the government, but they're also working as like basically pay for hire vigilantes.
Yeah. And these 4 guys are Hannibal, played by George Peppard, Faceman, played by Dirk Benedict, Murdoch, played by Dwight Schultz, and as we keep saying, B.A. Baracus, played by Mr. T. Kind of makes the foursome. They all have their typical traits. I guess Hannibal's kind of a master of disguise. He always creates the plan. He has a famous line that he says all the time. It was like, I love it when a plan comes together.
Always smoking a cigar.
Always smoking a cigar. Face Man is more about like his charm, and he seduces women, and he's kind of the big talker of the group. And then Murdoch is kind of a loose cannon, used to be in a mental institute, kind of a crazy man, a wild man, flies helicopters and stuff. And like, he's usually like the vehicle guy. And then B.A. Baracus is like the muscle, Yeah. And B.A. Baracus and Murdoch have a contentious relationship because they're friends, but they're always kind of breaking each other's balls until Murdoch kind of cooks him some dinner that he really likes. It's kind of like a running gag that all the time he can kind of calm B.A. down by cooking some famous food that he likes. But very,
and
very...
Another notable thing about B.A. is that he's also afraid of flying.
Yes.
Terrified of flying. Yes. And we should also say, let's just get this out of the way. The other notable thing about B.A. Baracus is that he's basically just Mr. T.
Yes.
Mr. T is not an actor that stretched that much back in the day.
No.
Basically, every character he played was just a version of him.
Again, kind of just cookie cutter characters, I guess. Mission of the week type of style of a TV show. And yeah,
campy, fun.
Yeah, silly and it hit it right.
I think just the right time. It hit, like it did have campy action, and then like I said, Mr. T actually became a bona fide pop culture sensation. So he quickly became the breakout star of the show, which I know really bothered George Peppard, and there was some behind the scenes kind of feuding between the two. Because Peppard was like, I'm the star, right? And everyone's like, no, actually, people really like this Mr. T guy, So.
And it sounded like Peppard was a prick to really everyone. He was really kind of the cancer of the group, respectfully, obviously. But there's
we don't like to shit talk actors.
We don't like to shit talk actors.
This is what we've heard.
Yes. And there was like a female character that was part of the mix, not part of the A team, but like was like kind of a reporter, and she was kind of sick and tired of the role, but also because Peppard was like kind of a sexist prick. Again, I don't like to shit talk actors, but kind of made sure she was fired. And then another girl or another woman came in, female actress, and Peppard was also not happy about that. And just kind of a salty guy. I don't know. I guess he can't really defend himself now, but
yeah,
that's what we're here.
Take that, Peppard.
Yeah, fuck you guys. But I guess the camaraderie of these actors never kept going, which is maybe a reason why the show didn't like keep in the public consciousness. You know what I mean? I don't know when really conventions were starting, but do these guys show up at conventions? Like you and me have been to a few. Does Mr. T do the convention rounds? Like
I would actually assume he does. Like that seems like exactly what Mr. T would be doing nowadays. But
right.
Well, I mean, like Dwight Schultz, if he's going to conventions, it's probably Star Trek conventions. Because hey, Chris,
oh, here
Dwight
we go.
Schultz, he's a regular character on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah.
Dirk Benedict is, these guys are like famous for other things, But I think what you just said is actually a good point beyond like the convention thing. I think you're right that in my mind, and I'm sure we're gonna get letters from some crazy A-Team superfan now who'll correct us, but we talked in the Lost in Space episode about how like Bill Mumy really kind of tried to keep that show alive by doing a comic book and TV specials. But I think you're right that when A-Team wrapped up, other than going into reruns, you're right that it's not like the cast was like clamoring to do like follow-up movies or TV movies or like even like you said hang out together and like promote the show anymore. So I think the show I think that probably is a large part of why it kind of like vanished from the ether a little bit.
Yeah, just kind of fizzled out, honestly. And again, that's what I was getting to before, saying John Singleton was attached to direct in the mid 2000s, was finally getting off the ground here. Ice Cube was approached to play B.A. Baracus. They also were looking at Mel Gibson as Hannibal, Christian Bale as Face, Jim Carrey as Murdoch, and Trev, your favorite actor, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as B.A. Baracus. So, I don't know.
So
I don't know what's going on there.
Dwayne, yeah, let's get that Dwayne Johnson thing out of there. But by the way, like an early 2000s version with that cast you just said, with like Mel Gibson, Christian Bale, Jim Carrey, and Ice Cube, I can totally see that. Like that's like in my head that just makes sense, you know. Especially Ice Cube as B.A. Baracus. I actually think that's pretty good casting.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Fox is finally ready to make this movie. John Singleton then drops out. And I guess it just, because of the development, there was like 11 writers that have come and gone on this project. It just struggled for years to shed the campiness of the show, taking millions of dollars, like I said, a dozen writers, to make this movie. And Joe Carnahan finally, I guess, is he approached, or does he say, hey, do I get a take for the A-Team? I'm not even really sure why Joe Carnahan kind of came to this.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Joe Carnahan, I guess we should just talk about him for a moment.
Sure, let's do it,
because he's an interesting guy. Even today, 2023, I don't know how I feel about Joe Carnahan. Can't say I don't like him. Can't say I'm necessarily a huge fan. Mm-hmm. He's a guy that's been attached to a lot of things and fallen off. I remember when he was supposed to do Mission Impossible 3. Remember that? And like when he left, everyone's like really heartbroken. They thought like, oh my God, I really want to see Joe Carnahan's Mission Impossible 3. I don't know. Like he's really hit and miss for me. Like he came blasting onto the scene with Narc, which is an awesome movie. Although it's one of those movies that I remember thinking was awesome when I saw it back in like 2002 and have never watched it again since. Mm-hmm. But I remember being, pretty impressed with it at the time. And then I don't know where you fall on this, Chris, but I think the thing that he's kind of most known for is his next film, Smokin' Aces. Mm-hmm. And I hate Smokin' Aces. Right. Like it's just so aggravating to me. It's like one of those like, look how cool I am kind of movies, you know, too cool for school, and its editing and the characterization and the dialogue. I actually much prefer the straight-to-video sequel, Smokin' Aces 2, which he did not direct, because I thought that one at least had a little bit more self-awareness of what it was. And then, obviously I'm not going to say what I think about the A-Team, but like I loved his follow-up to the A-Team, The Gray. Mm-hmm. I think The Gray is kind of like, I kind of think the Gray is like a low-key masterpiece.
Oh no, I'm with you there.
That's like oddly like not talked about at all today, like which is just so strange to me. Like that's one where I'm like, why did this not really hold on more? Because it's like the best of that whole Liam Neeson action run, you know. That's a brilliant movie.
Oh, The Gray is. I completely agree. I echo everything you're going to say about that movie. First off, let me just respond to the Smokin' Aces thing. I watched that when I was 17 years old. Yeah, so that is a perfect movie for a 17-year-old man. Yeah. We will definitely talk about the A-Team regarding that. But then The Gray is, I think, either forgotten or not talked about because it gets reduced to the movie that Liam Neeson fights a wolf. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's not the movie. The movie is not that really at all. No. It's about like the willingness to survive. It's about you versus the elements. It's about, you know, inherent like humanity and and just survival. Honestly, it's about survival, and it's
and there's a scene in The Gray which I still think about regularly. I'm sure you'll remember the same time about where there's one of the characters is dying and he's having a hard time accepting the fact that he's going to die.
Oh man, yeah.
And Liam Neeson like talks him through death in his final moments. That's like, that scene is just like one of the most powerful like explorations of death and coming to grips with it that I've ever seen. Yeah. And like, and then you're watching it, you're thinking, this is the guy that wrote Smokin' Aces. You know, so yeah, Joe Carnahan, because he writes a lot of stuff he doesn't direct as well. But yeah, he's a tough one to get a handle on. And I don't know, I didn't see his last two movies, Boss Level and Cop Shop. I've heard good things about both of them. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, like I guess I just have no overall opinion of him, but he's not someone I avoid a movie because he's involved, but he's not someone I necessarily rush to see it either. Yeah,
I think after The Gray, I was obviously very excited, and then I saw Stretch.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
Right, and that's what happened. It's like sometimes these directors, and again, we're not going to talk about A-Team yet, but some of these directors, they make like their filmography is very muddled, and then they make just a quintessential masterpiece, right? And then now, oh wow, Joe Carnahan is my guy. And then they follow it up with dog shit. Yeah. I mean, me and you are very similar in the sense that like once my director kind of burns me, I'm not going to be rushing out to their stuff. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to try out. Like it was like when Shyamalan did this to me. You know, when Shyamalan shit the bed, I think I just avoided him for 10 years. You know, you got to earn me back.
I think Carnahan is like the even more confusing one for me on that. He's like in the Rob Zombie realm for me, where it's like the gray is his Devil's Rejects, where I'm like, how is it that you made this like incredible masterpiece in the middle of a bunch of other middling stuff? You know,
yeah, that's a great analogy, actually. That's a great analogy. I never saw Cop Shop either, but it is written by a guy from my hometown, apparently, and around my age too.
Oh, that could have been you.
It could have been me, but instead, here I am, hungover from Christmas, and spending time with my great friend.
You could be writing Joe Carnahan movies, hanging out with Gerard Butler. Instead, you're hanging out with me, talking about Joe Carnahan movies. What did you do wrong, Chris?
Many things I did wrong to lead me to this place. Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised to answer your question really quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if he got involved. Joe Carnahan strikes me as someone who probably dug the A-Team when he was younger. You know, that would be my guess. I bet you he came in with like a take. I'm sure he was probably pretty excited to. If he was going to make a play for a franchise, this seems like one that, because if you look at everything he does, right, it is all Macho Man stuff.
Totally.
You know? So not Macho Man Randy Savage. Although Macho Man Randy Savage as Hannibal Smith would have been incredible casting.
That'd be great.
But it seems like the A-Team is kind of in his wheelhouse to a certain degree. So I would guess that once John Singleton dropped out, maybe he threw his hat into the ring.
And I guess Skip Woods threw his hat into the ring. And
Skip Woods. You don't understand how much I hate Skip Woods. It's funny because I don't really think about him much anymore because he's kind of like thankfully vanished since like 202015, since Hitman Agent 47. But there was a point where my friends were all aware of like how much this guy just drove me insane. Because like it is such, you just like as a writer, like I mean, I kind of liked Swordfish at the time when I saw it. Although it's another one of those movies where I've revisited it since and be like, man, I was stupid.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And then like Hitman, X-Men Origins, Good Day to Die Hard. It's just like why does this guy keep getting work? Like he kind of represents all the worst like action cliches, or his writing does, I should say. And like it's just I don't know. It's one of those things where because some of these movies made a little bit of money, he just kept going. I don't know. He was always my go-to example of like what is a bad screenwriter.
It doesn't help that he has like the worst name.
Yeah, that doesn't help you.
Like it's just a bad screen name, and we don't like to shit talk writers.
No.
Our spin-off gag from shit talking actors. But yeah, X-Men or there's now that I'm looking at the filmography, there's like 3 very high profile sequels or franchise movies that I have left extremely viscerally angry in this time frame, and it was X-Men Origins Wolverine, Indiana Jones actually, and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which he did not write. But A Good Day to Die Hard was really sewage water on my screen.
Because I think you're with me, and we're actually Live Free or Die Hard defenders, right?
Yes, yes, we are.
I like that. I like that one. I'm really happy. My Die Hard collection on Blu-ray is just the first 4, so I just still to this day pretend that they never made a 5th one.
Nice. That's like my collection of Star Wars movies, dropping the 9th. I don't know. Do you want to get into this film? There's not a ton of behind the scenes here. This movie falls into a Hollywood trope of let's bring back these old characters and old shows that had a following and kind of revamp them for what's cool and hot now.
Well, before we get into talking about the movie, should we just go through the 4 main cast members really quick and kind of talk about like why they probably got called up at the time they did? You know, because I think that's Because, I mean, like, for instance, let's just talk about, the main man of the hour, the lead actor here, our new Hannibal Smith, Liam Neeson. And so this is, like, it makes sense that Liam Neeson is in this at this time, because this is when we're jumping into Liam Neeson action star mode, full-on action star. This is, a couple years after Taken, and he's starting to make that, transition into primarily, almost entirely being recognized as an action star. Now, Liam Neeson, what a fascinating filmography and career.
Yeah.
Right? Because the kind of cliche thing to say about Liam Neeson today is that, he was this like really respected dramatic actor that then became like an action star late in life. But it's actually a little bit more complex than that. Because honestly, he kind of, if you look at his very early films, for a long time, he did do a lot of like genre stuff. He was in stuff like Crawl and like Delta Force and the Deadpool, and then obviously played Darkman, which is a movie he still talks to this day about how much fun he had playing it. And I think I honestly think you could get Liam Neeson back for like a Dark Man Legacy sequel with the right names involved. I'm
Right.
just throwing that out there, Hollywood. Let's make it happen. But yeah, so he did that for a lot, and then it's kind of like he stumbled into being like super dramatic man after Schindler's List.
Mm-hmm.
He had a couple of other things. He did like Ethan Frome and stuff like that before, but after Schindler's List, he became one of those guys. Right? Suddenly, it was now he's doing Michael Collins and Les Mis. Gangs of New York and Kinsey, and it's like, okay, he's Oscar bait man, right?
Yeah.
And then of course, then he does Taken, and his career goes in that direction. So it's kind of like he's had 3 phases of his career. I'm probably a bigger fan of that middle phase when he was doing the more dramatic stuff. When his occasional, like him being in Batman Begins, I remember that was one of the little side tangent here about Batman Begins. Do you remember when that movie was like coming? And like we first heard all the casting announcements and they put out that first poster, and you're coming off of the memory of Batman and Robin, which was like so goofy and so ridiculous and like what that series had become. And then suddenly there's this poster for Batman Begins, and it's like Gary Oldman, Liam Neeson, Cillian Murphy, Tom Wilkinson. You're like, what the hell? This is a Batman movie?
Yeah.
If today you heard Liam Neeson was in a Batman movie, you'd just be like, yeah, of course he is. But at that time, it actually seemed like a very prestigious get,
And they were like no flashy costumes. They were just like sold on their names alone.
Yeah, and then of course him doing the voice of Aslan around the same time. You're like, yeah, because he's got this like booming voice. Who else would play like Jesus Lion? And then he did Taken. That was pretty cool. Like it was like, oh my god, it's neat to see him do this. And then he just kept doing movies like Taken. And I don't know where you fall on Liam Neeson today, but he definitely did to me become. And this has nothing to do with A-Team because A-Team is early in the run, but like beyond A-Team, it really did get to a point where every time you saw a new Liam Neeson trailer, you're like, oh god, it really started to become like parody.
Oh yeah, it has become parody, and there's some fun to be had still.
Yeah, there's a couple like highlights in there. Right?
Yeah, like I do like Taken 1. I do not like the Taken sequels. I liked him in Nonstop in 2014.
Nonstop's a good one.
That's a good one. And then he's also started to be a little bit more comedic in this realm, which has been fun to see because like he's having fun in these schlocky action movies, like these 90-minute romps. But he's also unlocking a little bit of his humor side as well, right? So he's an actor that definitely knows what he's doing.
That's why I'm actually very excited that he's currently attached to play Frank Drebin in the Naked Gun reboot.
Same.
Which I think is kind of great, and I'm hoping he'll start a new phase of his career where he kind of does what what Leslie Nielsen did at the end of his career, and just kind of fall more into that goofy comedy realm.
Totally.
Yeah.
And now let's move over to Bradley Cooper. And he is coming off, going into the A-Team, he's coming off The Hangover. Yeah. I don't know, Bradley Cooper was nothing to me before The Hangover. I'm assuming he was for everybody else. He was kind of just a guy that shows up on, I guess he was on Alias. But other than that, that was it.
I knew him as like from Alias, and like he'd been like, like Wet Hot American Summer and stuff. So I kind of knew him as like an ancillary member of that whole like the State crew. I knew he was like buddies with them, and he would pop up in like their comedic shorts and skits and stuff. So and that's when it made sense for him to be like the bad guy in Wedding Crashers, right? So like and then when he went into and then he did The Hangover, I just kind of always assumed in my head there was definitely a point where I was like, Bradley Cooper's always going to be the smarmy guy in comedies, right? Like he's in that comedy realm. But nope, he eventually decided to become the guy who inexplicably is nominated for Best Actor 18 times or something.
Yep.
And then become like an Oscar-nominated filmmaker as well, which I did not see coming. But like I said, this is coming right off of Wedding Crashers, and this is Hollywood now is like looking to make him a leading man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a fan of Bradley Cooper. I like him. In a bunch of respects, like honestly, like I think he's kind of a great director too. Like it's been kind of cool to track his career. Him and Liam Neeson have an interesting, I guess, filmography, a pathway to their success. But I find Bradley Cooper quite an interesting person in Hollywood. Some movies have been junk. But then he plays, Rocket Raccoon in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and he's doing an amazing voice performance. Yeah. That you forget that it's him, and that's a compliment. He's good. But then he makes a movie like Burnt, and you're like, oh fuck, get this out of here. Or Joy.
Bradley Cooper's tough because I've always said because I feel like he is not as public as some other celebrities. I feel like he does, like we talked about, he doesn't promote like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. You don't see him doing as much promotion or interviews for anything, I feel like, as other people do. And so there's a part of me that in my head, whenever we talk about Bradley Cooper, I just assume that he's like an asshole in real life.
Yes.
And then I wonder, is that true, or is that because he's such a good actor that I'm conflating him with all the asshole characters he's played? And I feel like that's probably more likely, because it seems like a lot of people love working with him and honestly have great things to say about him. So I don't know why I even think he's an asshole, other than the fact that he just plays assholes so well.
Yeah. No, that's what it is. He's almost shoehorned himself into that character trope, and
he's got a punchable face too, right? Like, he's obviously handsome, but he's got like that grin where you're just like, ooh, he's so handsome. He's that guy that you.
No, he's handsome.
No, I know, but I'm saying he's handsome in the way that because he always plays assholes and he's handsome, he's the guy that you think is going to come in and like steal your girlfriend for sure.
Okay,
right?
yeah, for sure. I'm thinking punchable face like what's his name, Miles Teller.
No, he's not a guy. He doesn't have a Miles Teller face.
We'd only make fun of actors. We're not going to make fun of them. No. And then with the third person of the group, Sharlto Copley, also a strange career.
Oh, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah, exactly. So he hits the scene with District 9 1 year before the A-Team.
And let's just say, incredible performance.
Oh, amazing. Everybody at the time was like, this fucking guy is just friends with what's his nuts? Who's the filmmaker again?
Neil Blomkamp.
Yeah, they're like just buddies in South Africa, and now he's like giving one of the best performances of the year. And then maybe Neil Blomkamp kind of ruined his career as well by making him into Elysium. But he doesn't. And Chappie. Hold on though. I'm a Chappie defender. Come at me, F2F haters. On me. I'm a Chappie defender, but. Yeah, Sharlto, I like the guy. I like when he shows up, but he doesn't really have much of a career. Is that weird to say? Right?
No, I think that's exactly what I was going to say about him. A-Team is his direct follow-up to District 9, and it's very clear that it's, like you said, it's, oh my God, we have to get this. This is it. That was an instant star-making performance. Let's run with it. Let's make him a star. Let's keep it going. But the failure of A-Team and then Elysium and then Jesus Christ, Spike Lee's Old Boy remake. He has a bad string there, and I think it's very safe to say he just never took off the way he was expected to after District 9.
No,
he's really, he's still working, but I'd say he's pretty much on the C or D list now.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Of like casting calls and things like that.
And then rounding out the quartet, is it quartet?
Yes.
Yeah. Is Quinton Rampage Jackson, former UFC fighter. That's what he is.
Yes.
UFC fighter.
This is weird, and this is why I said, like Ice Cube as B.A. Baracus, I totally understand. I guess to a certain degree, I understand also what they're going for with Rampage Jackson. Now, I watch UFC. I'm an MMA fan. I definitely remember. I like most UFC fans. I found Rampage Jackson very entertaining. Like, he was known for not only his fights being entertaining, but obviously how charismatic he was in the lead-ups to the fights and the post-fight interviews. He seemed like a guy. He's one of those like guys that popped, right? Mm-hmm. And it's very, very common for people to take those kind of athletes and try to move them over into the acting realm as well. And also they're probably thinking, well, Mr. T was just like a bouncer, who became famous because of his personality. So maybe they were kind of thinking that maybe that was a little bit of it. We don't want like a really famous actor or a classically trained actor for this part. Maybe we can make a new Mr. T by elevating Quinton Rampage Jackson to this, one of the 4 leading roles in this huge Hollywood movie. After he'd only done like a little roles and kind of straight to video stuff, I remember he oddly popped up in another Bradley Cooper movie that I quite like, Midnight Meat Train, the Clive Barker horror film. But then, since A-Team, he's kind of just... He's become like what all those other UFC guys are, like the Chuck Liddells and the Ken Shamrocks, where if they're in a movie, it's a kind of a straight to video action movie. This was like the one attempt to see, can he be more? And I don't know. Well, I guess we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in the review what we think of that. But odd choice for sure.
Yeah. Let's talk about it in the review now.
Yep.
This court is rendering guilty verdicts for this Alpha Unit, or A-Team, and incarceration in maximum security facilities for 10 years.
We are innocent.
Where's the plan, boss?
You actually sound worried.
Those men were your responsibility. Find them.
Hell no. I ain't stepping foot in any type of aircraft.
Man up! Get in that plane. We gotta finish the escape. Man up and get in there.
Putting the team back together.
How do you plan on stopping them? Don't sweat them.
This just got exciting.
I'm BA. You're gonna be unconscious.
Just a heck of a beautiful place. Just a timeshare. I'd love to get in on it.
Good morning.
He tried to escape by jump-starting an ambulance with a defibrillator.
Clear. My kind of guy. I told you the mission wasn't over.
What are we talking about? Clean records?
We were set up.
It's payback time.
Oh, hell yeah, Hannibal.
They are the best, and they specialize in the ridiculous.
Give me a minute, I'm good.
Light them up. Kill them all.
Give my team an hour. We're unbeatable.
The A-Team.
Hands up. You pancake my van. I'm gonna kill you, fool.
You can't park there. It's a handicapped zone.
Meet John Hannibal Smith, Templeton Face Peck, B.A. Baracus, and Howling Mad Murdoch. Together, they make the A-Team, a group of skilled Army Rangers with 80 successive missions under their belt in the past 8 years. Stationed out in Iraq, they are approached by CIA agent Lynch, who offers them a job involving stolen USD mint plates and $1 billion in counterfeit money. The A-Team takes up the job only to find out that it's a setup. Court-martialed and sentenced to 4 individual prisons, the team is almost a distant memory. 6 months later, Hannibal escapes prison and pulls together the team to take down the man who set them up and restore their reputations. With a demoted female captain on their tail, who happens to be Face's old flame, the team races to seize the plates again, only to discover that nothing is as it seems.
Yes, the A-Team. Chris, I'm going to let you go first, and I'm also just curious if you can talk a little bit about your past history with this movie, because I don't know, I'm not even sure if this is your first time watch or what.
I saw this in theaters.
Okay,
Actually.
so did I. I'll just get that out of the way.
Okay. And I saw it at a different time in my life, right? I was like 20, 21 years old. And when I saw it back then, I liked it. I had a really fun time with it. And that has kind of changed as I've grown older and a little wiser. Sometimes that doesn't change. You know, sometimes I do still like something that I watched from my past, but what I felt this time around, especially with being so maybe enveloped in so many other films at this point, and especially the era, and looking back on this era of like the 2010s, the early 2010s and such, there was like this Michael Bay effect going on that, you know, Michael Bay's movies do well, but Michael Bay is Michael Bay for a reason. And I feel like this movie was another attempt at capturing this Bay effect. You know, at this time in movies, you know, every action movie had to be really quippy and funny and almost dirty, you know? And then also every comedy had to be balls to the walls action as well, and really over the top and kind of dirty again. So these two things that Bay handles, I think, quite well. I know what people don't like Michael Bay, but you can't deny that he does what he does right. And I think this was an attempt to capture that feeling. And I found the A-Team to be the abrupt asshole team. this movie's like really annoying. Right away, you're just like, yeah, like it's annoying.
Oh, sorry, I don't want to give away what I think. Sorry.
No. Believe me, I had a feeling we'd be similar on this. It's just very noisy. It's excessive. It's obnoxious. Everyone's a fucking douchebag. It's loud. It's cluttered. It's muddled. It's just noise. It's just noise for 2 hours. And this is one of the rare occasions where my girlfriend watched this with me. And we're hanging out before the holidays, and I'm like, hey, I gotta bang this movie out. Like, you want to actually sit with this one? It's a modern one, so you might have some fun with it. She was just like, why is everybody talking over each other for the entire film? And usually when I'm editing this podcast, I like to throw clips in every once in a while. I think that'll be impossible to do in this episode because there is no clear line of dialogue that's happening in this movie. It's just noise. So let's go from there. Start to agree with me. and we'll take it from there.
I mean, I do agree with you. I agree with you for like even different reasons. I mean, I agree with everything you say. I have other reasons I don't really love this movie. And I also saw this in the theater opening weekend. Boy, I don't even remember why. Because like I said, it's not like I was an A-Team fan necessarily. Mm-hmm. But I guess that was the period where new blockbuster, I'll go see it. And I remember walking out of it being fairly underwhelmed by it. Not hating it, but just feeling like that seemed like I'll forget that tomorrow. And honestly, I did. And I didn't think about it again until watching it the other day for this. Let me talk about what I think are the two killers here. One, and this goes back to our Lost in Space discussion. Not to relitigate that. I know that's one we disagreed on. Mm-hmm. But we talked in that episode about the tendency of Hollywood to return to these old shows that were loved for how silly, funny, and campy they are and say, well, let's get rid of all that.
Right.
And I think, and you said like a lot of the rewrites and the problems trying to break this movie as they were trying to come up with it, we're trying to drain the campiness out, and I think that really is to the movie's detriment. Mm-hmm. It's trying, like you said, it's trying to be funny, but never campy, and that's a big distinction. And I think that was a really big mistake on their part to not try and instill this movie with the same kind of kid-friendly spirit of the original show. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So to try to make this into more of, like you said, like a kind of a more brutal, hard-edged action movie with like more adult humor, I think that was a mistake. And then the other thing, and you kind of got to this, you're talking about the characters being annoying. I think a lot of that comes to, I was going to say these are 4 talented actors. I don't know. These are like 3 talented actors and Quinton Rampage Jackson. But these 4 guys have no chemistry.
Zero.
Like I think that's really the killer here is that you don't like watching this group together.
No.
There's no reason to believe they are this like family unit. These like even like squabbling friends. They never gel. And if you're going to make a franchise out of this and you're going to ask me to want to watch them for like, 2 or 3 more movies, I want to feel like these guys like being around each other, and that's just never the case. So with it not being campy, with it being too self-serious, and also overly convoluted, like this is a pain in the ass kind of movie to try and pay attention to and follow, which is really weird for like an A-Team movie. But yeah, you compound that on the crew just not having any chemistry, and it's like you said this earlier, but it's true. The movie's just kind of dead on arrival.
Yeah, and like I understand that these guys are like a ragtag team of misfits on paper. Like I get that, right? But they never seem sincere with each other. No. Like there's a difference between squabbles and breaking each other's balls and joking around and laughing together and just kind of needling each other. But this one felt like I was watching four paid actors just reciting lines on top of each other. And that was like the most like just troubling thing of the movie was I'm sitting there the whole time, and the first 20 minutes, there's this gigantic action scene happening. And it's so convoluted and so stupid, and it's introducing your characters. And it goes for 20 minutes before they even show you the opening credits. And then, the whole time I'm sitting there being like, separate these guys, like put them in their corners. I like all these people individually, but I do not like them on screen together. Later in the film, nearing the beginning of the film, they go to prison, and I was like happy, like I was like, give me a break. Give me 20 minutes. Like, let's just go see them in their cells together. Alone. You know, I found every time they got together on screen, I was just, annoyed is the word I kept coming to.
Yeah.
I just felt
Well,
annoyed.
You know what the other problem with that is they're all for bringing like a completely different energy too.
Yeah.
And like you'd say that's like could be a good thing, right? Because that's the idea that the four characters should have their distinct personalities. I get that, but it really does feel like all four think they're in a different kind of movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the performance Liam Neeson is giving is not vibing with what Bradley Cooper is doing. Bradley Cooper is bringing more of like a hangover type of energy. Liam Neeson is he's trying to be like in an old like Men on a Mission movie. You know, Copley's going for you mentioned Jim Carrey before. He's going for like a Jim Carrey kind of vibe, and it's just like they're clashing against each other so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the dialogue is already not fun, anyways, when you have these four actors who are all doing like a different thing, and it seems like they're competing with each other more than they're trying to work with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes like really aggravating. So I'm
gigantic mess. Like gigantic mess. And there's not to say that there's no fun to be had. Okay, there's two set pieces in general that I think are fun to the
Don't tell me you think the flying tank part.
No, but hold on, it becomes like a cartoon. Well, hold on. Well, it gave me a little bit of a break from it. It gave me something to look at.
It's good in concept, but not necessarily execution. I think.
And what we're talking about is there's the scene, like there's an action scene where a tank falls out of the sky, and then basically they are parachuting the tank, and Bradley Cooper's on top shooting a turret, and then they make the tank's cannon shoot to kind of direct it to go somewhere. It's fun in like this is totally Looney Tune banana territory now.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like you just said, does not fit with anything we're seeing.
I also heard a rumor, I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard that Kevin Feige saw the CGI in that scene and said, "Get me those guys to do all of my Marvel movies in 2022."
and beyond. Like that scene, and then he definitely saw the scene where all the CGI Lego bricks are falling around, aka the sea cans in the big action-packed finale. It's just gobbledygook, you know. And I keep going back to the Bay effect, okay? Because the first couple minutes of this movie, I wrote down, I said, this is big and loud and obnoxious already. There's lesser Bay energy here. Like, it looks like a guy that doesn't have the confidence of Michael Bay. You know, obviously you're going to watch a Transformers movie. Oh, not obviously, but I mean, like when you go into a Transformers movie, there's a Transformer pissing on somebody, and like there's a dog humping, and it's the mom's getting high, and it's stupid. It's stupid. But there's something about Michael Bay that it's like, that guy's just an adult baby, and he's shooting it well, but like Joe Carnahan is just kind of a. Who's the guy that did Battleship? What's his name again? Peter Berg. Those two guys are fighting for the chance to be Bay 2.0, and both of them are not quite hitting the mark. I think Peter Berg is a better director than Joe Carnahan by like quite a bit, but I still think he's one of those guys that is striving for something that he's not capable of doing. You know?
When you keep bringing up Michael Bay, I'm going to bring up another director's name into this mix, and it's one of the producers of this film, Tony Scott.
Totally, yeah.
Imagine this movie directed by Tony Scott.
Yeah.
And how much better it would be.
Way better.
Like that kind of visual style, that kind of kinetic energy. Carnahan is just, I don't know, like the directing seems bored in this. Like because there's no energy to it. The shots aren't memorable. There's nothing that's composed in a really striking way.
It's confusing.
It's very confusing. I mean, it's confusing visually. And then I mentioned this earlier, but let's just talk about this. Like, honestly, am I just dumb, or is this movie unnecessarily complicated? Like, I think it's kind of a tough story to follow. And I'm sorry, an A-Team movie shouldn't be. You're not making some labyrinthian, mystery plot here. Well, like it's convoluted in like the dumbest way.
Well, what they're doing is they're expanding upon the bio of the A-Team show. You know,
well, that's the problem too, right? Like this should have, because I know the A-Team show from the research I've done, and I know we both do research on the show, is that it's not like the pilot episode was the origin story. They just always get the origin story out of the way in the opening narration, and that's exactly what this movie should have done. Yeah. This movie should have just been they're already the A-Team and they go on an adventure, because this origin story, it doesn't give us the A-Team we want to see if we are fans of the show, like because they're not like what the show delivered
No.
in terms of their mission, and it's taking too many steps to get them there.
And they skip over a lot of the origin. It does what the Fantastic Four movie does, a Fan Four stick. You get the team together and then they do a flash forward. Mm-hmm. And like this movie gets the team together in the first 20 minutes and then it does an 8-year time jump. And you're like, well, show me that. Mm-hmm. Like show me the camaraderie. Show me these guys getting along. If you're going to do an origin story, give me the fucking origin. You can't have your cake and eat it too in this case, because it just becomes a confusing mess that you just want out of. Like, I felt like I just wanted out of this movie, and it's just, like you said, it's visually uninteresting, visually boring. It's cross-cutting back and forth. There's no elegance to it. There's no elegance to anything on screen. And, I flashed back in my head being like, why did I like this movie? Like, why did I leave this movie in 2010 feeling like, man, it's always been in the back for like a couple of years after that. I was always like, I'll get that Blu-ray when it's cheap. And I wish I could talk to myself back then and be like, what were you thinking? I don't know. Has something changed in me? I don't really know. Like, why was I not annoyed back then? Because like you walked out of it being underwhelmed, but I feel like we're both walking out of it here. I wouldn't say angry, because we had seen it before and our expectations are like zero. But I feel like we are both seeing the extreme aggravating seams of blockbuster garbage.
Maybe that's it, right? Maybe it's just like more years after it of seeing more crap like this.
Has failure to franchise broken us?
Well, if you consider not liking A-Team being broken, then I'm glad to be broken.
Totally.
But I think it is that. I mean, I think it's that we were both, even though I was a little older, I think we were both young enough and naive enough when we saw it to not be as aggravated because we hadn't also sat through so many, future Bay or Tony Scott wannabes. Right. So maybe there was like a little bit of novelty to this at that point that there isn't now, and also like seeing better versions of a Liam Neeson action movie since then. Yeah. Or knowing that Bradley Cooper can definitely be in like better stuff, right? And like even seeing like a much better Joe Carnahan movie the next year, knowing what he can do when he actually tries to write like a real movie and not this. So maybe that all plays into it. But another thing there's a couple other things I want to obviously get to here, and we talk about a story being convoluted and being hard to follow, and you kept talking about it's like cutting back and forth between these different stories. We should mention, too, another big problem here is, and I feel like this is such a go-to problem for me in a lot of our favorite franchise movies, boring villains.
Yeah.
And so our villain here is, sorry, spoiler alert for A-Team, folks, because it's meant to be a twist, I guess. But the fact that they've treated it like a twist is hilarious. But it's Agent Lynch, played by Patrick Wilson. Now, I love Patrick Wilson.
Yep. This is
at the point where this is like following Watchmen. But obviously, as we know, Watchmen was like not a huge financial success. So I do remember when I saw this movie, Patrick Wilson was still at that point of like where I thought it was really cool that he was like the bad guy in this, because he was like one of those actors who we were all waiting for his big thing. Yeah. Right. And be like, oh, Patrick Wilson, I like that guy. I wish like they would find more stuff for him, because he was so good in like Hard Candy and Little Children and then Watchmen. But it's just like, man, nothing is like really hitting for this guy. And I didn't realize that it would come, I think just a few years after this when he finally did. Or no, actually, you know what? Heck, it's this year, isn't it? The same year.
Insidious?
Insidious, yeah. And he finally finds his thing as like the horror guy, right? Gets 2 big horror franchises with Insidious and The Conjuring. And I'm happy that now people like love Patrick Wilson, because I think he's awesome. But not awesome in this. That's not his fault. The character is like a mess.
He's also, again, on a totally different wavelength than everybody else. Mm-hmm. I feel like every single actor in this movie is in a different movie. Yeah. Like truly, even like we haven't even mentioned her. Jessica Biel is in this movie,
who's basically not in a movie. Based on her, I don't like to shit talk actors, but her performance would suggest she did not realize she was supposed to be acting.
Yeah, she is like just a nothing burger of a role, and I don't get it. It's hard to talk about this one because it's like an abomination of something. You know what I mean? The Abomination team.
Let's try and get off on maybe a better tangent here. Let's talk about Jessica Biel for a second.
Sure.
She's not great in this. You can tell she's very much, we need a woman in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that's kind of appropriate that she's not playing that reporter character from the show, but it feels like it exists for the same reason. Right? Like, I don't know, we just need a woman in this. So she's like another government agent that is Faceman's ex. And she ends up getting demoted because of the whole same mission that they go on that gets them arrested. But now when they escape from prison, she's basically the one trying to bring them in, but they're trying to convince her, no, we're like actually good, you know, you should help us out. So, you know, we get to do the old two like ex-flames, maybe reconnecting. Will she turn them in? Will she become their ally? But the movie just gives her nothing to do, and she's like a flat line here. But I just want to ask you in general, what are your general thoughts on Jessica Biel? Because we were kind of talking about how we feel about all these other actors and where they were in their careers at this time. What about her?
I will never not like looking at Jessica Biel.
Not what I asked, but yes, I understand.
That's kind of where my feelings lie. I think she's gorgeous. She's got a, you know, but I everything she's in is just like, I'm looking right now. She's not good. She's
well,
like she was good, but she was good in her early career, maybe. I don't know.
That's the thing. I'm looking at her filmography too, and I think she strikes me as one of those people, and you've mentioned this before with other actresses, where sometimes their beauty becomes like a hindrance.
Mm-hmm.
And I do wonder if she's just kind of had that thing where it's almost like her entire career, she just hasn't been used right. You know, like they keep trying to give her like the wrong kind of roles. I don't know. It's weird because I think, you know, you look back at something and like the simplicity of like her performance in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which she's quite good in.
Yep.
You know, and she's great in like a smaller role in The Rules of Attraction. But then when they start like trying to make her like big action star with like Blade Trinity and Stealth, and then when they want her to be like, you know, serious CIA agent or whatever she is in this, she doesn't have like that kind of weight to her, I don't think. Yeah. I think she's probably always better off when she's in the you know, stuff like Valentine's Day, and you know, when she can play like kind of lighter, you know, comedic beats maybe.
Yeah, and then ever since like she's been kind of married to Justin Timberlake too, it's just kind of like her movie career is just falling off anyways.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of a power couple, you know, like they got businesses, they got Justin Timberlake's like whole entire life, you know, his whole music career. I don't know if she's an actress that, I mean, I don't want to shit talk actors, but like, is she an actress that loves the craft of acting? You know, and that's a question that I'm not sure. Like, did she just fall into it? I mean,
you watch A-Team, and her performance in here definitely seems like she's struggling, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think you can tell. I think she seems almost embarrassed to be in the movie, and I think by that I mean not that she thinks the material is beneath her, but I think she realizes that she can't quite be as tough as this role demands. You know,
totally.
So she's just like flailing in this performance, and like it's pretty painful to watch because of how much screen time they give her.
Can we talk? Let's like we've been like very negative. I guess it is. You know, we're recording this mid holidays, right? Let's say, what did you like? Anything? I have a couple things I did like.
No. I have more things I don't like that I want to talk about, but tell me your things you like.
I know. Well, let me just cut in with a couple things.
Okay.
Like I said, the cartoony scenes, the two big action scenes are like have some fun to them in a like, again, a convoluted way, but there's something there that made me and my girlfriend laugh of just how fucking stupid it was, you know. I liked Face's prison cell. I thought that was funny. That Face Man, played by Bradley Cooper, is kind of the, you know, he's the charismatic charmer of the group, and of course his prison cell has like all the amenities. He's got a big screen TV. He's got a tanning booth. He's basically swindled all these guards. He's banging, you know, another guard as well. So it's kind of like, okay, well, you know, that's kind of fun. And one other thing I liked is there's a scene where these goons are in a car with Patrick Wilson, and they're threatening another guy, and they're like fumbling with the suppressor and like
that
totally
seems funny. You're right.
And totally like bungling the threat, and you know, he holds the gun up to his ear with his phone, and it's actually like a comedic beat that had me laughing pretty good. I was like, okay, this is probably the best scene in the movies right here. Other than that, you know, it was a real disappointment. B.A. Baracus is the muscle of the group, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, after prison, he B.A. swears off violence. I'm not killing nobody. And I felt that there was, like, no evidence of, like, B.A.'s former personality. Like, I had no sense of how many people he's killed or viciously maimed or nothing for him to totally renounce this side of him, to give just all lip service. So we don't really understand that. We don't really understand that the group is like losing the muscle. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I want to push this a little further, Chris, because I actually don't like this for a different reason.
Okay, go ahead.
And you can call me, I don't know, maybe I've gotten old and lame and too sensitive in my old age or whatever, but I actually found it really kind of icky that his character arc in this movie was, the movie plays it like he's broken and flawed now because he doesn't want to kill people anymore. And his big, like, heroic moment is when he finally decides to kill again. And I thought that was, like, bad enough.
By the way,
like, what actually,
right after the Gandhi pep talk?
yeah. What really kind of got to me about it, though, too, was knowing that one of the reasons Mr. T did not want to do a cameo in this movie was that he said, first of all, part of it was like, he was like, well, I played that part. I don't see any reason to kind of go back to it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm not playing the part, kind of one of those things again. But he also did say that he felt like the movie was too violent and taking it too seriously. And he was talking about how the show was like more fun and more, of an adventure show, and kids could watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that meant something to Mr. T, and that they not only decided to take his character and make his character arc that he needs to learn to kill again, but that they attached Mr. T's like iconic mohawk to that in a symbolic level, felt like a slap in the face almost to like Mr. T, because the whole thing is like when we first meet BA in this, he's got the mohawk, then they go to prison and they come out and he just has a regular haircut, and they're like, "Where's the mohawk?" And he's like, "No, I got rid of the mohawk because it's like symbolic of how I've decided to be a pacifist now and not kill." And then later, when he decides, when he finally kills a man again, they played as like this big heroic moment where he takes his skull cap off and he's got the mohawk back.
Right.
And I was like, ew. I was watching the movie and it like really bothered me. I was like, I didn't. It's not that I just watched Die Hard again for the 300th time the other night, and I love watching John McClane kill people. I love watching John Wick kill people. I'm not saying action stars shouldn't kill people. But there was something about it being the A-Team and knowing that the original A-Team had a lot of like violence and shooting, but not necessarily like a lot of killing.
Right.
And it was more like family friendly. And for them to like hammer that point home so much, where like the team is like disappointed in him and they make fun of him because he says he doesn't want to kill people anymore. And the movie treating that moment so heroically, I don't know. I just thought it was gross. No,
you're so right. I didn't even link the Mr. T stuff together. But you're so right. It's one thing to renounce maybe like getting in fights, and maybe renouncing a little bit of brawn and fighting and maybe some brutality. But yeah, you're right. In the movie, he straight up says like, "I can't kill anymore. I do not want to kill." And then it's like, "Nah, I'm gonna kill everybody," and everybody rejoices. The peasants rejoice. Yeah. It's very. Yeah, even thinking back right now, it does not sit well. No wonder Mr. T didn't want to be part of this. Did you hear did you see the conflicting, tit for tat on those comments of him not wanting to be a part of it? And then Joe Carnahan said, no, actually he viewed the film and thought it was the greatest thing in the world. Oh yeah. Sure. And then an attorney from Mr. T actually had to come out and say he's never seen the movie and he will not comment. Like, what the fuck?
This is strange because you and I are not huge fans of this show, but it's still you can still get a sense when you watch something and you feel like it's disrespecting the original source material.
Sure.
Or like where it's not delivering what you would think it like an AT movie should. So like not only that thing with B.A. Baracus being all about killing now, but like I said, not doing an origin story instead of just telling another story with them. But even the fact of like they destroy the iconic A-Team van in like the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
That was like a really weird choice. And yeah, like I was watching the entire movie because I couldn't remember. I was like, oh, when does the van come back? Like when do they like rebuild the van? And they never do.
No.
And I was like, well, okay, that's weird. That's like one of the things everybody remembers from the show. Like the van is like a huge part of it. So like when you start your A-Team movie by blowing up the most symbolic like imagery prop of like the show, I feel like you're kind of spitting in the face of the property a little bit and doing that like, this ain't your daddy's A-Team, we're the cooler A-Team, like, and And then when you drain all the camp out and you're trying to make it more serious, and when you make BA all about killing people, I don't know. I just don't feel like it's a very respectful movie in terms of like what it's adapting.
So what you're saying is don't shit on recognizable iconography of your famous franchise. So are you saying that when Luke Skywalker throws his lightsaber over his shoulder, are you saying you're mad?
Does he have a lightsaber again at the end of the movie? Yes. You know, so it's like, that's like character based, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Like so if you can justify your decisions, you're obviously, you can always play with this iconography, but like, why did they get rid of that van? You know, was there for any other reason then, like I said, was that for any other reason than for it to be like, we just want you to know this ain't the A-Team show.
Yeah. And you're so right by saying like, and I bring up that Last Jedi one, not to poke you, because me and you are Last Jedi defenders. Are and always will be. But you're so right. It's used thematically later on, you know, throughout the film as on a character level. If this movie destroys the van, why not bring the team together at the end, making the van again? You know, just that alone will solve that problem. But this one, completely forgets about the van, and
or it's because Murdoch is the one who destroys the van, right? So at the end of the movie, you want to have it be like he's like, I got a surprise for you, right? And he pulls a tarp off. And he's like, I rebuilt your van. Like, heaven forbid you have a scene in the movie where they seem like they do something nice for each other. They like each other,
I know.
You know, which might like us, which might help us as the audience connect to them.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, again, we've never seen an episode of the show. This can't be the way it was, right? Like, these guys are such assholes to each other.
Well, I kind of have the sense that maybe it was, but also, and I don't.
But on this level though, Trev, like again.
Probably not on this level, but I will say, and this is maybe not the most fair, defense, but you'll get what I'm saying. When you're watching a dumb, campy show from the 80s, you're just way more forgiving of that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, the thing is too, like, we know that the A-Team was an episodic show. We know that, as we said, it's not a season-long story. You know, it's not like what peak TV is today or anything. It was that every week these four characters went on a different adventure. They were hired to do something different. So I don't think it's probably the most character-based show. I don't think you were expecting Hannibal and BA to have season-long arcs where they change as people.
Right.
So that's just different. And this movie is trying to tell a character-based story of how do these people go from point A to point B by the end of the movie. So those flaws actually become a little bit more. That's why I said, if this movie just did the same thing the show did and started with that voiceover narration, said they're already the A-Team, they're already outlaws, and now they're getting hired to do their missions, and then you just picked up and they were like kind of like assholes to each other, it actually wouldn't bother me as much as saying, hey, they've here's their origin and they all hate each other.
Yeah.
That's what throws me off. Yeah,
you're already starting off on the wrong foot. That it just makes no sense why they would ever build a friendship afterwards. Yeah, this movie does have more cameos. Mr. T said no, and two cast members did film cameos that ended up getting relegated to post-credit scenes. And Dirk Benedict, who played Faceman, the Bradley Cooper character, spoke out regretting his cameo, stating, "You'll miss me if you blink. I kind of regret doing it because it's a non-part. They wanted to be able to say, oh yeah, the original cast are in it, but we're not. It's 3 seconds. It's kind of insulting."
Yeah. And you know what? He's right.
Yep, absolutely.
Like, I heard that and I sat through the credits to watch those scenes, and they are so brief that you do think, why didn't you just leave that in the movie?
Yeah.
Like, they're so quick that taking them out and putting them after the credits actually does seem kind of disrespectful to me.
Another person that understood why the movie failed is Liam Neeson. He commented early in 2012 that he understood that why it wasn't successful. He says, "I watched it about 2 months ago, and I found it a little bit confusing. And I was in the thing. I just couldn't figure out who was who and what's been done to him and why." Yeah, you and me both, Liam. Fuck.
Yeah. I shouldn't have to be getting out a whiteboard and trying to map this out like a Charlie conspiracy board from It's Always Sunny when I'm watching an A-Team movie. There's no reason for this plot to be, and people are probably listening and saying well, they haven't even tried to summarize that plot, but no, I'm not going to. It's too overly convoluted.
Yeah. You know who didn't understand why it failed? The director, Joe Carnahan. He was adamant that the issue with the movie was the marketing. Trev. He says, we kind of fell victim to a marketing misstep in that there wasn't necessarily an understanding of what the show was. We didn't do an adequate enough job of telling people what the movie was, if you know what I mean.
No, I don't.
I have no idea what he's talking about here. I've seen the trailers. I've seen the trailers now multiple times, especially putting this podcast together. And it clearly shows you what this movie is.
Yeah.
And sometimes these guys just got to take the L, you know?
And also, like, in your quote alone, if you are saying there wasn't enough understanding what the show was, then you're speaking to what we said earlier. Then why are you even making an A-Team movie?
Yeah.
You know, why are you assuming people will be excited for the movie if you're like, well, no one remembered the show, so.
Yeah, I feel like this movie would have been what we would make the movie because we have no knowledge of the show. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I actually would disagree that Joe Carnahan had a take on this or was a fan. You know, after Smokin' Aces, they probably went they did. They looked at a bunch of different directors, you know, like they looked at John Singleton and he dropped out. Well, Smokin' Aces was a thing a couple of years ago. Let's get this guy. He's good with ensembles. Let's get this guy. You want to make it flashy.
Yeah, but
and cool?
but the reason I think still that he might have been a fan and he had a take is you've seen this too. You're very aware of the kind of fans who, as they grow up, they feel like their properties have to grow up with them. You know, the people who are like fans of Power Rangers when they were kids and now they want like Power Rangers to be violent and R-rated.
Yeah.
And like, you know, like, so I think maybe I could see Carnahan being one of those, being like, well, I liked A-Team as a kid, but now that I'm adult, I need to make the adult version of A-Team instead of tapping back into like what made it special when you were a kid.
That's a good point. The Power Rangers one is weird when everybody's like, let's make it the R-rated Power Rangers.
Yeah. Who wants that?
Yeah.
I mean, those idiots do, but
yeah, exactly.
Chris, I can sense that we're wrapping up, but I just want to ask you one last thing about the movie. And like, this is actually a larger question that kind of encompasses a lot of movies. But where are you at on a good old shipping yard climax for action movies? Because have you ever truly clocked how many movies have their big action climax in shipping yards full of, like, you know, surrounded by shipping containers?
No, but there's got to be a lot, right?
Oh my God, it's so many. In fact, this is something me and my friends used to start to like kind of pay more attention to around this time because this very same year, 2010, there was another movie, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds here because this is a movie we're going to cover eventually.
Mm-hmm.
There was a movie that came out in 2010 that's actually very similar to the A-Team called The Losers, which is another movie about a ragtag group of like special forces people, and that movie also ended in a shipping yard. Really? And those came out the same year, and me and my friends just be like, "Oh my God, 2 shipping yard containers!" But you also obviously it probably started with like Lethal Weapon 2, which ends in with a shipping container action sequence. We have Batman Begins has a sequence in a shipping yard. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Iron Man 3, the big climax, is in a shipping yard. Deadpool has its action climax in a shipping yard. Red has an action sequence in a shipping yard, and Hannah has an action sequence in a shipping yard. Wow. And then, I don't know, like a couple of years ago, I'm sitting down, got my Disney Plus on, I'm watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier for some unknown reason, and sure enough, action scene in a shipping yard. It's just like, it's one of those like easy places for people to like set, like action scenes. And that's probably only like, I'm sure I just only had like a small handful right there, but there's probably like way more. But it's got like, every time I see it, it just feels like so lazy to me now. I'm always like, oh God, here we go again. Because it's like, I get it. It's like a big place where, you can have the geography of people running through, the different corridors of shipping containers and things and blow up the shipping containers. But it's also like so visually uninteresting.
Right.
Like that's why I'm always like, oh God, another one of those.
Yeah. Well, at least this one had a game of cups, with shipping containers. And
it's true.
Yeah, that was fun.
I'll ask you one last thing, Chris.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
I know neither of us care that they didn't make an A-Team 2.
I actively enjoy that they didn't.
But was there any part of you that, with the little sequel tease at the end, go into, ooh, John Hamm might have been able to save A-Team 2?
You know what? I have this written here. John Hamm is the sequel bait heard around the world. That's what I wrote down. That's what I heard. But this was like pre-John Hamm's total success, yeah? Or this was his like very beginnings of
this is near the beginning, yeah.
This is right, yeah. No, I don't. And do you have any idea? Did John Hamm, was he playing a character from the show? He must have been, right?
No, I think just the whole joke is that he shows up and he calls himself. It's like there's multiple Agent Lynches, right?
Oh,
like,
right.
That's the whole joke.
Yeah, I forgot that hilarious running gag. So yeah, no sequel. Neither of us want some at all. But but in 2015, 7 years ago. Hold on, it's 2023 now, Trev. 8 years ago. Yes. Fast and Furious writer-producer Chris Morgan said that he's executive producing a remake alongside Tanya McKiernan, who's the daughter of the original show's co-creator, Stephen J. Cannells. This new A-Team, Trev, was going to feature both males and female members of the group. That was their big creative diversion.
I bet that was going to go over really well with a lot of morons on YouTube.
Yes. Lots of think pieces. And, well, like I said, that was 8 years ago, and, well, nothing's been said since then. So I would just assume that we are not going to see any A-Team anything for a long, long time.
And that's fine.
That's
like that's I was going to say, like, if A-Team as a property was to come back, I think TV probably is the place. Mm-hmm. And more specifically, I would probably say, like, do like an Amazon Prime, like 10-episode show or something to, kind of put that property back out there. But honestly, I do think as much as Hollywood wants to try and resurrect and revive every piece of like known IP, some of them, you just have to admit, some of them, their time has come and gone. They were like a time capsule of a particular moment. And I think that's definitely true of the A-Team.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's not one we have to bring back, folks. Let's just let it die.
And again, that's okay.
Because honestly, the thing is, and this is again, I know we've said this before, but I get it's about 4 characters, but the A-Team was Mr. T.
Yes.
And Mr. T was playing Mr. T, and that's a singular personality, and that's the problem with. I think Ice Cube would have been a better BA than Quinton Rampage Jackson, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because you have a character playing who was a real personality essentially.
Yeah.
And that's always going to be the problem. You can't overcome that. Mr. T is a singular persona in our history,
and that's what I mean. Like that's what you're getting at. Is the A-Team was lightning in a bottle for 5 years.
Yes.
And that is okay. Some things are fine to let die. And let go away, and just they had their time in the sun. Let's move on. But time and time again, Hollywood wants to waste hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on stuff like this. And it sucks because, I think me and you both would agree that most people in production of things go out to make something good. Like I think most people do care about their jobs and they want to try. So it is depressing to see something like this that is just so utterly forgettable, and just so blah in basically every single way. And especially with the added baggage of being such lightning in a bottle, I think this actively, well, actually probably not because people don't remember it. I was going to say it was actively hurts the legacy of that show. But as me and you have even said multiple times now, I think the show is kind of forgotten. Yeah. So, I mean, it just had its time and it's done with. So, R.I.P. A-Team, I guess. Yeah, that'll do it for this one. Next episode.
Would you recommend it?
Oh, no. No.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
I want to actively make a time machine and go back to 2010 and find myself and
kick your own ass.
I was gonna break my own legs, actually. Yeah. Anyway. Next episode, further ringing in 2023 with the ABCs of TV. We're going to watch Baywatch from 2017. I'm really looking forward to this one. Not so much about the movie, but I don't know if you know this, Trev, but The Rock likes to talk, and he is an annoying person. And I am excited to speak about Dwayne The Rock Johnson and his misinterpreted franchise Viagra. That's what I'm.
Yeah, you and I have had a lot of conversations off mic about Dwayne Johnson. We are well overdue to talk about him in this podcast. It's not going to be the last time we talk about him.
No.
We know that now for sure.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm excited to finally put to recording our thoughts on I don't want to say necessarily the man, but the man, the image, the persona, all of it. So.
Yes. So follow along at F2FPod. That's at F2, the number 2 FPod on Twitter, Insta, Facebook, all the socials. Like us there, like us everywhere. Rate, review, whatever you do. Throw us a star rating. That would be awesome, especially in the new year. That'd be great. And just join the tribe, hit that subscribe, and keep along with us. Yeah, this is gonna be a good year. We actually have everything planned out until August.
Yeah.
We said this before, but don't ever question how much effort we put into this. I guess we have a little bit of a holiday hangover right now, but we do the work. So
holiday hangover, and we just watched the A-Team, so give us a break.
Yeah, please.
Our brains aren't working right now. Don't worry, I'm sure Baywatch will fix it.
Oh yes. Anyway, thanks for listening.
See ya. For me, Mr. T is, from he's Clubber. Jesus Christ, we're both fucking up here.
It's new mics. It's a new year. We're coming off eating a lot and probably drinking a little bit.
I know it is true. Yes. I'll just say that again.